In the annals of history and the intrigues of modern geopolitics, few narratives are as charged with controversy and mystique as the legend of Solomon's Temple. This essay delves into the depths of a theory that ties together the threads of ancient prophecies, Masonic aspirations, and the complex web of global leadership. It is a narrative that challenges the boundaries between historical truth and myth, drawing connections that span continents and eras. Herein, we explore the implications of such beliefs and their ramifications on international relations and cultural perceptions. The alleged Solomon's Temple, Beit Hamikdash, the crux of the matter. You are entitled to wonder about the significant Jewish Masonic plan. There exists a substantial amount of information linking European and North American world leaders to the State of Israel, with a particular goal they aim to achieve. What could be this ultimate goal of these individuals, and why such secrecy in its pursuit? Why do the Masons act in the manner they do, and how would one respond to this? Do you believe you understand what global Jews desire? What is their concealed objective? Indeed, the ultimate aim of Masonic despots and all satanic sects is straightforwardly, they aspire to rebuild Solomon's Temple. The Masons are bound by their pledges to reconstruct this temple. This temple will be the crowning achievement and the prize for global wars, revolutions, and endless killings on Earth. It is the prize that neither Masons nor Jews would settle for anything less, as a token of appreciation and tribute for the series of torments inflicted upon millions of men and women throughout the ages, across all nations of the world. These lost souls were merely a sacrifice for that temple. This temple, which will serve as the core for the temple of the Antichrist and Satan, is where they intend to perform magic rituals, glorify Satan, indulge in debauchery, and engage in detestable practices. Merely contemplating this temple represents the greatest prize for the spiritual vacuum of those who refuse to acknowledge the truth. They also deny the existence of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, considering it a pagan temple that must be demolished and replaced by the so-called temple. This would consequently lead to the first manifestation of the Messiah, according to Jewish belief. It constitutes the most egregious historical forgery and the most significant mythical lie ever concocted in human history. Indeed, it is from the Masonic imagination. It is undoubtedly extremist Jewish thought that falsified this fictitious legend and perpetuated it throughout history. The Jews falsely claimed that Prophet Solomon built a temple to safeguard the Ark of the Covenant, and that this temple was rich with pagan symbols and myths associated with the worship of Canaanite gods, and that Prophet Solomon constructed the temple for the Jewish god Yahweh, or Yahu. They also offered detailed accounts of the temple's architecture and the worship practices as they existed in the 1st century AD. Solomon's Temple, purportedly a Jewish temple, is believed by the Masons to have been constructed by Solomon in the 10th century BC. It was subsequently destroyed in the early 6th century BC, rebuilt later that century, and ultimately demolished completely in 70 AD. The Jewish claim that our master Solomon built the temple on Mount Moriah, Mount of Jerusalem, or the Plateau of the Haram, which is located above the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. This mountain is referred to in English writings as the Temple Mount or, in Hebrew, Har Habayit, Mount of the House or House of the Goddess. It has not been historically verified by Western archaeologists that King Solomon built the temple. Anthropologists and European archaeologists conducted extensive research over several years in and around Jerusalem, conclusively demonstrating that there is no evidence of any temple, as claimed by Zionists, in Jerusalem. On the contrary, they confirmed the existence of a temple, one of the largest, located outside Jerusalem in the area of Beit Lid, a Palestinian town west of Nablus and east of Tulkarm, over 45 kilometers away from Jerusalem. In 1967, an excavation campaign began under the leadership of Professor Benjamin Farad and his assistant, Meir Dove. The excavation, extending 400 meters in length and 80 meters across, took place 20 meters beneath the Al-Aqsa Mosque. However, they only uncovered walls of the noble sanctuary and found Umayyad, Roman, and Islamic artifacts at a depth of 10 meters. To this day, no evidence of the alleged temple has been found. In 1983, American researcher Grubbs Halsall spoke with archaeologist Goran Franz, who confirmed the absence of any proof that the temple ever existed. When scientist Iggy Jonah was asked where the temple was located 2,000 years ago, he admitted that he did not know, and that it remains unknown. Concerning the model of the temple, it was characterized as merely a Jewish hypothetical concept. A compelling remark made by Israeli archaeologist Professor Ziv Herzog of Tel Aviv University was particularly striking. His thoughts were shared in the Haaretz newspaper on November 28, 1999, and they have since captured my interest. He observed that extensive archaeological excavations conducted in Israel throughout the 20th century yielded disheartening results. No evidence found supports the biblical narrative. Herzog pointed out that the patriarchal stories in the Book of Genesis are mythical, and there was no military conquest associated with their entry into Palestine. One of the most disconcerting revelations is the discovery that Yahweh, the God of Israel, was believed to be married to the Canaanite goddess Asherah. Furthermore, the shift towards monotheism in Israel did not occur at Mount Sinai, but much later, during the latter part of the reign of the kings of Judah, around 600 BC. As a descendant of the Jewish people and a scholar of biblical studies, I understand the frustration that arises from the gap between our expectations and reality. The weight of this realization is heavy, yet I remain dedicated to recognizing the critical insights and new interpretations of the facts provided by my colleagues. With a heart heavy with sorrow, I ask, where is the temple our scriptures speak of? Has it disappeared so completely that not even a pebble remains? All that we know of the temple comes from what our rabbis have taught us. And the Jews continue with their falsehoods, and to perpetuate the false legend, they claim that the temple was constructed and demolished 3 times as follows. The city of Jerusalem and the temple were destroyed in 587 BC by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and the Jews were taken as slaves to Babylon, which is known as the Babylonian captivity. The temple was reconstructed around 520, was demolished by King Antiochus IV in 170 BC, and it was restored by Herod, who became the king of the Jews in 40 BC, was demolished for the 3rd time by the Romans, Titus, in 70 AD, and they razed Jerusalem entirely, due to the revolutions conducted by the Jews against the Romans. And in fulfillment of Christ's prophecy about the temple and its destruction, not one stone shall be left upon another, the temple was thoroughly demolished. In considering the mendacious myth regarding the builders of this temple, you will find it a narrative that neither reason nor history can accept. Neither their stories are accepted by a reasonable person, nor does history accept them as credible. They assert that they built the temple against the wishes of the goddess, Baho, i.e., because they angered their god by its construction, and then within the same book, they claim that the son of our master Solomon, Menelik, stole the Ark of the Covenant during the alleged construction process and headed with it to Yemen. So, since the Ark was stolen and they did not find it thereafter, why build at all? Did they not claim to have constructed it by our master Solomon specifically to safeguard the Ark of the Covenant? Also, when Queen Sheba believed and converted, it was because she observed our master Solomon uniting God, and he converted like the rest of the prophets as originally mentioned in their books. So, how could Solomon construct a palace or a temple for the gods of the children of Israel while he unites God and worships one God? Moreover, their history records that the alleged temple was constructed and demolished several times, while history does not note that the Al-Aqsa Mosque was ever demolished or rebuilt even once. So how can the temple be demolished, and the mosque remain if both the temple and the mosque were situated at the same site? And imagine if Jewish Masonic scientists discovered any evidence, no matter its significance, under the Al-Aqsa indicating Solomon's temple. Can you envision that the Jews would remain silent? And what is genuinely controversial is that the mother of our master Solomon is not Jewish. Today, Judaism is only confirmed through the mother's side. So if that is indeed the case, then according to Jewish tradition, our master Solomon is not considered Jewish according to the teachings of the Talmud. Moreover, are they searching for the original temple that our master Solomon constructed? Or the second? Or the third? Is there any proof that the Jews constructed the 3 temples on top of one another? Also, did the Jews not mention that the temple that was constructed was merely a small gateway overlooking the palace that Solomon built? So why has the history of the Jews or the Masons not mentioned that there is a palace, and they did not search for it at all? So there is no alleged temple, but it is a fabrication and a historical myth built on many false myths, which constitute most of the Masonic myths and their falsehoods. The conclusive evidence that the myth of Solomon's temple is merely falsehoods and concoctions of Masonic schemes. But it was necessary to explain several important points about the history of the alleged temple and what this temple was supposed to contain. Who actually found this temple, assuming it existed? What was the primary role played by the Knights Templar in the myth of the temple? What I have mentioned previously regarding the reasons and evidence for the non-existence of the temple from its foundation are clear and correct and are apparent to the public. Nonetheless, the compelling evidence I'm about to reveal will show that it was actually the Masons and Jews who attempted to establish the existence of Solomon's temple as an undisputed truth. However, they also demonstrated that they were the ones who fabricated the myth in the first place. Remember the saying of Abraham Lincoln, "You can fool some of the people some of the time, and all of the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all of the people all of the time." What exists within this alleged temple? And the narrative of myths continues. The Masons claim, and they firmly believed, that Solomon's alleged temple was the repository of the 10 Commandments and Moses' staff. Moreover, they exceeded the bounds of reason and delved into the realm of fantasy and space, asserting that the temple contains countless treasures, which people, pilgrims to the Holy Land, place these treasures there seeking blessings. Why? And here lies the greatest calamity, for they believe that Solomon's temple contains the eternal treasures of Judaism and the treasures and secrets of Christian eternity. The Holy Grail. This is the legend of the cup used by Joseph of Arimathea to collect the blood that dripped from Christ's body on the cross. This cup had miraculous power. Then Joseph of Arimathea took it to Britain, where he founded a lineage of guardians, Priory of Sion, to protect this royal lineage that may belong to Christ and Magdalene, or at least to David the king and Aaron the high priest. The discovery of this cup was the goal of the Knights of the Round Table formed by King Arthur, who ruled Britain at the end of the 5th century AD and the beginning of the 6th, around whom many legends revolve. And all evidence suggests that this cup is a fabrication from the imagination and does not exist. There are also delusions and legends that glorify Mary Magdalene as being the Holy Grail herself. The Ark of the Covenant. It is a chest made of wood and covered with a layer of gold. Inside it, Prophet Moses placed the tablets of the testimony on which the law was inscribed. The skull of Christ. This explains the placement of the skull and the 2 bones used first by the Knights Templar as their emblem to commemorate Christ's blood. The bloodlines of Christ. This is a dedication to the idea that there is a lineage of Christ, and it is the same myth as the Holy Grail and the Holy Blood, as some say. There are Christian groups that believe in this idea and attempt to prove the descent of this lineage from Christ by all means. They play a significant satanic role in the conspiracy against the world, and they will be mentioned later. The wooden cross on which Christ was crucified. As Christians believe, it is also said that only remnants of this cross exist. They wrote in their lodges that no Masonic lodge could be built unless it contains these 2 pillars of knowledge. The pillars and all the brass vessels were made by Hiram, a man whose father was Phoenician and mother was Israeli from the tribe of Naphtali. They also referred to the pillars of cloud and fire that rested upon the temple, and led the children of Israel through the wilderness, with the right pillar bearing the name Jachin, a Hebrew name meaning steadfastness, and the left bearing the name Boaz, a Hebrew name meaning in strength. So the pillars by their names indicated that the temple stood firm in honor, and they were a reminder to the Lord's priests serving in the temple to speak of God with steadfastness and strength in their service. Yet they are buried in this alleged temple. But this is not the truth. The reality is that Solomon's temple does not house the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, or any relics of Christ. Furthermore, it lacks the so-called pillars of knowledge and the cross, contrary to what has been claimed. This is in addition to the fact that the temple itself is a false myth and essentially does not exist. But what is the truth really? The myth of Solomon's temple, curiously, finds no mention in the Torah. This tale, often followed in Jewish law, is said to have been influenced by the writings of Babylonian priests during the Jewish exile in Iraq. This period of Babylonian captivity began in 585 BC when King Nebuchadnezzar took the Jews as slaves to Babylon, tired of the strife, hypocrisy, envy, and theft they brought upon Jerusalem, which, in his view, justified their captivity and enslavement. These writings, which they later called the Torah, were written by their hands in the 6th century BC, and they finished writing them in the 5th century AD until it took its current final form. And it is not divine as they claim. If one delves into the teachings of contemporary Judaism, the new Torah, one finds only unclear talismans that could not possibly have been divinely revealed. Nor are they also from the words of Moses, as the Torah and the Book of Genesis contain many beliefs that trace back to Sumerian and Babylonian origins. Even their holidays and rituals are those of the Babylonians, imposed on them by the kings of Babylon and written by Jewish rabbis and placed in the book, the Torah. And this was done by Ezra the priest, who gathered from the Jewish scholars after their return from Babylonian captivity whatever he could gather of lies and stories and placed them in a book he called the Torah. The Samaritans refused to recognize the system established by Ezra, not relying on the Jewish scholars of captivity, thus exacerbating the dispute between them and the Hebrews, leading the Samaritans to separate with the Torah containing only the 5 books. The Hebrews claim the authenticity of their scriptures, and the Samaritans claim they are on the truth, as the Samaritans assert that the Hebrew Torah was written by Ezra, so both alleged Torahs could not have come from the mouth of Moses, nor did God send them to Moses. There is also the Greek version considered valid among Catholic and Orthodox Christians, while the Hebrew version is the version adopted by the Jews and a majority of Protestant scholars. However, the Samaritan version, acknowledged by the Samaritans among the Jews, stands out due to its stark differences from the other versions in most narratives, clearly suggesting alterations. What is particularly ironic in this so-called divinely inspired book, and across the 5 books, is the account of Moses' death. Logically, Moses could not have possibly narrated the story of his own demise. This stands as irrefutable evidence of the text's fabrication and falsehood. In the middle of the 17th century, the priest Richard Simon rejected the idea that the Torah as it is should be considered the Book of God because it contains many contradictions, tedious and false repetitions. Dr. Ali Khalil states in his book, Judaism Between Theory and Practice, excerpts from the Talmud and the Torah, in Chapter 1 Section 1. The 5 books of Moses are the product of ancient oral traditions that have overlapped and intermingled with one another. Thus, if the foundation is flawed, so too are the derivatives. The disturbing irony in this book, the Torah, is that in many repetitive parts it only revolves around Solomon's temple and Jerusalem. Indeed, Solomon's temple is the only edifice described in detail in the Torah. And Solomon did not build the Al-Aqsa Mosque but only expanded it. And the true narrative is that before Solomon and during the reign of the Kingdom of Solomon, it was the demons who taught people magic and sorcery, and Solomon became aware of this. He gathered all the books that contained the magic and sorcery they practiced and placed them beneath his throne. And he ordered the execution of anyone who learned magic. So what is the story of our master Solomon with the children of Israel and magic? During the rule of Solomon, the children of Israel set aside the Psalms, the sacred texts, and were swayed by the enchantments and spells from the books of magic that demons disseminated among them. This passage describes a myth involving demons who eavesdrop on angels to steal divine insights about future events. They relay this information to priests, who then manipulate the populace with a mix of truths and lies, recording these fabrications as divine insights. As a result, the people believed in the demons' knowledge of the unseen. Solomon responded by seizing these misleading texts and hiding them to prevent further deception. After Solomon's death, Satan revealed the hidden texts, which were then used by the Knights Templar for dark magic practices. This led to a deep reverence for Satan among Masons and Jews. Believing him to have superior divine knowledge, they profess their allegiance to Lucifer openly and seek out mystical texts believed to hold powerful secrets. Though these treasures are said to be lost or non-existent, reflecting the depth of myth intertwining with historical narratives around Solomon's temple, this tale underscores the broader themes of deception and influence, emphasizing the complex interplay between myth and reality in shaping historical and contemporary viewpoints. If you found today's exploration into the enigmatic tales surrounding Solomon's temple intriguing, and you're eager to delve deeper into the mysteries of the New World Order, make sure to subscribe. Join us as we continue to uncover the hidden forces and secret agendas shaping our world. Don't miss out on any of our upcoming investigations. Subscribe now for more insights into these profound mysteries.